You've probably grabbed a quick sandwich from Subway without thinking twice. Maybe it felt like the healthy option, or just something easy on the go. But behind that Eat Fresh slogan, there's a secret recipe of corporate half-truths, strange ingredients, and some seriously questionable kitchen practices. Let's just say once you know, you might never look at that footlong the same way again. Let's rewind to California. Two women bite into their tuna sandwiches, and something tastes off. So off, in fact, they take Subway to court, claiming the tuna doesn't contain any actual tuna. Not a trace. That's not just a bold claim. Lab tests backed it up. No tuna DNA detected. Subway's defense? The DNA must have been denatured during cooking. Sure, that's one way to explain mystery meat. But this isn't an isolated fluke. It's part of a pattern. Remember that, because even the bread, the foundation of every sandwich, isn't safe from scrutiny. In 2020, Ireland's Supreme Court dropped a carb-loaded bombshell. Subway's bread legally couldn't be called bread. Why? It had 5 times the legal sugar limit. Each foot-long loaf packed around 50 grams of sugar. That's more dessert than lunch. That's cake territory. And that wasn't even the weirdest thing in the buns. Ever heard of azotocarbonamide? It's a chemical used to make bread softer and fluffier. Sounds harmless. Until you realize it's also used in yoga mats. That's right. Same compound. Flexible bread. Meat downward dog. Subway defended its safety until public pressure got too loud. Then, poof, it vanished from the recipe. No explanation. Just silence. And that intoxicating, fresh bread smell wafting through malls and food courts? Hate to break it to you, but it's not the result of bakers lovingly kneading dough. It's a synthetic aroma, pumped through vents, designed to trigger hunger before you're even inside. The dough itself, shipped frozen, packed with preservatives, and baked on site. Kind of like heating up a Hot Pocket and calling it gourmet. Let's talk about that so-called 9-grain wheat bread. Sounds like a health nut's dream, right? Wrong. Food scientists found it contained more sugar than many candy bars. So when you thought you were being good, you were basically eating a sweet roll stuffed with soy-soaked chicken. Because now we're slicing into the meat. That tuna debacle? Just the tip of the deli counter. Subway's chicken? Tests revealed it was only about 50% chicken DNA. The rest? Mostly soy and additives. It's not even half the bird. And the defense? That it's still technically chicken. Just enhanced, like a bad sci-fi plot twist. What you're eating is restructured meat. That's the food industry's term for protein that's been broken down, mashed together, molded, and reassembled into perfect little shapes. That perfectly round chicken patty? Not found in nature. It's built in a lab, not born in a coop. Every meat arrives pre-cooked, pre-seasoned, vacuum-sealed, and preserved to the moon and back. That's why your turkey sub in Texas tastes eerily identical to the one in Toronto. It's culinary copy-paste. But it also means Subway's ham, turkey, and chicken start tasting like, well, the same thing. Food scientists call it the Subway flavor. That vaguely savory, oddly familiar taste that coats every sandwich no matter what you order. It's like the meat equivalent of elevator music. Technically there, but hard to describe. And get this, the average cold-cut combo contains meat from multiple animals, processed in different plants, combined into a single, uniform mystery. That bologna? It could come from 7 separate factories before it ever hits your sandwich. By the time it lands on your plate, it's more global supply chain than deli meat. So when you pay $6.99 for that footlong, you're not just buying a sandwich. You're buying a chemistry project, engineered for consistency, shelf life, and above all, profit. But don't go anywhere, because next up, we're getting into the infamous footlong scandal. That 1-inch difference, it cost Subway over $500,000, sparked a worldwide ruler-wielding rebellion, and exposed just how thin their promises really are. You're going to want to hear this. Let's zoom in on one of the most hilariously absurd and deeply revealing chapters in Subway's saga, the footlong controversy. It all started with a photo. An Australian customer measured his footlong and posted a picture online. The verdict? 11 inches. The internet did what the internet does best. Spiraled into chaos. Suddenly, everyone was measuring their subs. And guess what? The footlong wasn't alone in its shortfall. Turns out 80% of Subway sandwiches labeled footlong came up short, with some barely stretching past 10.5 inches. So what did Subway say? Their defense was a masterclass in corporate backpedaling. Footlong isn't a promise. It's a trademarked name, like Big Gulp or Whopper. It's more of a vibe than a measurement. But customers weren't having it, because when you ask for a footlong, you expect 12 inches, not 11 and change. Anything less feels like you're getting shorted on purpose. A class action lawsuit soon followed, revealing that Subway's bread-making rules were stricter than a high school dress code. Each loaf had to meet precise specs for shape and weight, yet somehow actual length slipped through the cracks, like they could measure sugar to the gram but forgot the ruler. Eventually, Subway settled the case. They paid $520,000 in legal fees and promised to improve their quality control. They even rewrote training manuals, instructing franchisees on how to properly measure bread, because apparently about this long wasn't cutting it. And still, they refused to guarantee every sandwich would hit the 12-inch mark. Why? Because dough, they argued, is unpredictable. It rises and shrinks, depending on temperature, humidity, even altitude, which, okay, fair, but this is a company that's been baking bread since 1965. You'd think they'd have figured that out by now. But this wasn't just about sandwich size. It was a glimpse into a deeper issue: Subway's obsession with control and the hidden costs of its rapid-fire expansion model. Let's talk about franchisees, the people who invest their savings, take on debt, and hustle day in and day out to run your neighborhood Subway. On paper, it seems like a solid gig. Open a store, follow the formula, rake in cash. Reality check? Not so simple. To open a Subway, franchisees pay upfront fees ranging from $15,000 to $300,000. But the real kicker is the fine print. Franchisees are locked into supply contracts, forced to buy all ingredients from Subway-approved vendors, and those prices way above market rate. One owner claimed they were paying 50% more for tomatoes than at the local grocery store. And no, they weren't heirloom or gold-dusted, just tomatoes. That pricing model squeezes franchisees hard, so what do many of them do? They cut corners. Training gets rushed. Maintenance gets skipped, and food safety, let's just say it becomes a flexible concept. Most Subway franchise owners make about $31,000 in profit a year. That's less than the cost of college tuition. Some barely break even. Others have to work double shifts just to keep the lights on. And when they try to sell their stores, Subway makes that nearly impossible too, maintaining tight control over who's allowed to take over. Some owners are stuck in the sandwich game, even when they desperately want out. The employees, they don't fare much better. Many are undertrained, underpaid, and expected to do the work of 3 people. One worker said their entire food safety training was, if it looks okay, it probably is. Another learned sandwich assembly by watching co-workers eyeball toppings. Consistency? Not exactly the word that comes to mind. And those corporate inspections? Often just performance art. The moment word leaks that an inspector is coming, stores go into panic mode, scrubbing, hiding expired products, and pretending they've been following protocol all along. One employee called it the Broadway show of food safety. Still with us? Because it gets worse. Next up, what health inspectors really found lurking behind Subway counters? Moldova mice. And some food storage choices that will make your stomach turn. What you're about to hear could change how you look at that sandwich station forever. Keep watching. Let's peel back the curtain on what health inspectors have uncovered inside Subway's kitchens. Spoiler alert, it's not the eat fresh fantasy we've all been sold. In 2023 alone, over 2,000 Subway locations were hit with critical health code violations. That's not just a few bad apples. It's a full-on orchard. And the number one offender? Temperature control. Inspectors found meat and cheese left out at room temperature for hours. One Florida store was keeping their tuna salad at a steamy 72 degrees. That's not sandwich safe. That's Petri dish territory. Cross-contamination? An art form in some locations. Employees were caught using the same gloves to handle food and cash, because nothing spices up a sandwich like the bacteria from a crumpled $5 bill. In Ohio, one store chopped raw chicken and vegetables on the same cutting board. No wash, no switch, just a roulette wheel of potential salmonella. And then there's the veggies. You'd think eat fresh means crisp, clean produce. Think again. Multiple stores were cited for barely rinsing vegetables. Some just waved them under cold water for a few seconds, if that. One inspector found lettuce with visible dirt still clinging on. Another found tomatoes stored in a container that had previously held cleaning supplies. Nothing like a side of bleach with your BLT mold, practically part of the decor. Inspectors found it in ice machines, on walls, even behind the sandwich prep counters. Walk-in coolers looked more like abandoned science experiments, with vegetables decomposing faster than a bad avocado. In one case, inspectors found a cooler filled with liquefied cucumbers. Yes, liquefied. And pests? Oh, the pests. Mouse droppings near food storage areas. Ants inside the sugar container. Cockroaches spotted crawling across the sandwich line in Texas. It's enough to make you rethink every fresh bite you've ever taken. Broken equipment added another layer of chaos. Malfunctioning refrigerators. Thermometers that didn't work. Cutting boards so scratched up they looked like they'd been attacked by a wild animal. One inspector found a meat slicer so caked with dried-on residue it could have made a sandwich on its own. Even the basics of hygiene fell apart. Some stores didn't have usable hand-washing stations, blocked by boxes, or in one case, a stack of expired bread no one wanted to throw away. Others filled soap dispensers with water to save money. That's right, fake soap. Because who needs germs gone when you can just pretend? But here's the most troubling part. This wasn't a surprise. These weren't one-off flukes. They were symptoms of a larger, rotting system, one driven by overworked franchisees, underpaid staff, and a corporate playbook focused more on expansion than accountability. Which brings us to Subway's growth model, or more accurately, its implosion. From 2015 to now, more than 5,000 Subway locations have shut down. That's more closures than some chains ever open. In 2023 alone, 700 stores closed their doors. Ovens off, cookie cases emptied, signs taken down. Why? Because Subway got addicted to expansion. They wanted a location on every corner, in every gas station, in every strip mall. One town in Pennsylvania ended up with 6 Subways within a 2-mile radius. You don't need a business degree to see the problem. When you flood the market, you cannibalize your own sales. One store opens, and the store next door starts bleeding customers. One franchisee saw sales drop 40% after another Subway opened in the same shopping center. Imagine competing against yourself and losing. Store revenues took a nosedive. 10 years ago, the average store brought in nearly $500,000 a year. Today, closer to $350,000. That's a $150,000 drop. And for owners barely scraping by, that's the difference between profit and foreclosure. Some desperate owners tried everything. One ran the entire store alone for 6 months, making sandwiches, mopping floors, handling customers, restocking supplies. Others converted parts of their stores into mini-marts, hoping that snack sales could save them from the sandwich slump. But most were just stuck, trapped in contracts they couldn't escape, with stores worth less than the initial investment. You couldn't even sell the business without Subway corporate approval. And buyers? They weren't exactly lining up to inherit a failing franchise. And yet, this story still isn't over. Because while stores were closing and franchisees were drowning, the higher-ups at Subway were preparing for their next big move. But it wasn't a solution, it was a sale. Coming up, who really bought Subway? And what that means for the future of your lunch. You won't believe who's now calling the shots behind the counter. Stay with us. Here's where the story takes its final jaw-dropping twist. After decades of expansion, scandals, and shrinking sandwiches, Subway did what so many aging empires do when the cracks start to show. It looked for a buyer. And in 2023, that buyer showed up with a suitcase full of cash and a very different kind of playbook. Subway was acquired by Roark Capital, a private equity firm with a massive appetite for fast food. You might not know the name, but you definitely know their portfolio. Arby's, Dunkin', Buffalo Wild Wings, Jimmy John's, and more. It's a food empire hiding behind a financial firm's logo, a shadow kitchen of corporate control. Roark Capital isn't in the sandwich business for the love of food. They're in it for ROI, which means cutting costs, streamlining operations, and maximizing profits wherever possible. And when private equity enters the chat, that usually spells bad news for quality, employees, and even the customers. And for the franchisees still holding on, Rourke's takeover could bring even more control from the top down. Tighter supply chains, stricter guidelines, higher fees, lower flexibility. The dream of owning your own business could turn into little more than running someone else's spreadsheet. Employees might feel the squeeze too. Already juggling multiple roles for minimum wage, they could see even fewer hours, more rushed training, and more pressure to hit arbitrary productivity metrics. The human side of the sandwich shop, shrinking faster than a foot long in the oven. But the most dangerous shift? It's what happens to consumer trust. Because for years, Subway built its brand on one big promise: eat fresh. It was supposed to mean transparency, wholesomeness, quality. But what we've seen is the exact opposite: prepackaged meats, fake bread scents, sugar-laden wheat loaves, and meat products that might legally qualify as science experiments. Subway's story is a cautionary tale, a case study in how a fast food juggernaut tried to sell itself as healthy, wholesome, and fresh, all while hiding behind a curtain of marketing tricks and corporate secrecy. It's a brand that started with good intentions, grew too fast, and eventually became a parody of itself. The bread isn't bread. The tuna might not be tuna. The meat is molded. The sandwiches shrink. And now the future is in the hands of financial engineers, not food lovers. So the next time you walk past that familiar green and yellow sign, you'll know what's really going on behind the counter. It's not just a sandwich shop. It's a symbol of everything that can go wrong when profit overtakes principles. But here's the twist. You, the customer, still hold the most power. You choose what you eat. You choose where your dollars go. And you deserve to know what's in your food, how it's made, where it comes from, and what corners were cut to get it in front of you. Don't settle for marketing slogans. Ask the hard questions. Read the labels. Measure the sandwich. Because when it comes to fast food, knowing the truth might just be the freshest thing of all. And that's the real story behind Subway. Not just the bread, not just the meat, but the entire system, from the factory floor to the checkout line. One long, twisted journey through corporate spin, legal loopholes, and food that's just a little too uniform for comfort. Stay curious, stay skeptical, and next time someone offers you a foot long, maybe bring a ruler, just in case.